This is Gemara and Eruvin Daf Ayin Tas. The learning tree is Chos for Shem Vidamir Ben Ikir Men Vivek Laim Ram Khan Idchaim and Sashon Sivin Rezedol Sarbat Ken the Nendali to Basimas Kaiser Yuschem Sarasi Yosil and Endel is a finish of Leir Shem Vasnamiv Shavek Shin Khan of Adam and Idriv the name of Khan Rizol Besoy Sharchali Israel. We pick it up on the bottom of Ayin Ches. Amid Beis, 3 lines from the bottom, says the Gemara, Mali Offer. We said that we have this charit, we have this ditch between two chatzeros, and again we're trying to figure out, are the two chatzeros considered one big chatzer? And therefore, if they're one big chutzner, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is that you'll be able to make one eruv altogether. Or are they considered two separate chatzeros, and therefore you have to make two chatzeros, one in each chutzner. So the Mishnah taught us that mali offer, if the ditch is filled up with dirt, then it connects it, because you have a ditch between two fields, it's filled up with dirt, now it's one big field. So you said the Mishnah, at the end, as you can see over here, the Mishnah said, Mali offer, Yisrael then Ma'arvin Echad, Vein Ma'arvin Shnaim. You make one eruv, you do not make two. So it says the Gemara, 2 lines at the bottom, Afilu Bistama. It sounds like, even if you filled it up with no intention at all, not that you specifically intended to either keep the dirt there or not, but Afilu Bistama, like Rashi says all the way in the bottom, Lo Yadinan, we don't know if you necessarily intend to keep it there or not. Says the Gemara, is that true? But tonight I'm learning to the Mishnah. So we have a house that's filled up with straw or with stones. Ubit loy bottle. If you're mevatel it there, if you say you want it to be there, it's gonna stay there. So what's the obvious implication? Bit loy in, loy bit loy loy. So before we go into Amid Aleph, let's foresee what's going on here. It's a din tum of a tyro. As you see in the Rashi at the end of the Amud, Rashi explains. Bias. Let's look at the Rashi, last Rashi on the Amud. Shetumas meis b'seichli. We have a mace inside a house, so we know the mace in the house is going to fill up the whole house with tuma. Umilu afay yisraris, and the entire house is filled up with dirt or with rocks. Ubit loy mevotel, and you mavatel the dirt of the rocks there. Then it's mevatel; it's considered like it's there. Vavei tuma retutza she'ein lo oyel atzma. So now the tuma doesn't have a roof, because the whole house is filled up with rocks and with straw, and therefore the tumas retutza goes all the way up to the heavens. Ubaykas va'ila adarakia goes all the way up, and therefore the tumah has no roof. V'hamal alagag tamei. If you are on top of that roof, you'll also be tamei, because the tumah goes straight up because there's no roof. Why is there no roof? It's in a house because the entire house is filled up with straw and with stones, and you intend to keep them there. If there's no oil that has an airspace of a tefach between the mace and the roof of the house, it goes all the way up. So said the Gemara, and that's the question. It's only if you're bittel, only if you're mavatel it there. You intend to be there. The obvious implication is, if you intended to be there, then that's when we say it's going to be there. However, loy bit loy. But if you do not intend specifically to be there, it won't work. So that the question is, in our Mishnah, it said bistama. If you just don't think anything, then it's enough. It's going to be there forever. Amar Rav Huna explains, Rav Huna mantana. That Mishnah that we just quoted, that said you have to specifically be mevatel it there, that's Rav Yosi. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Meaning, that's Rav Yosi, and our Mishnah is not Rav Yosi. Says the Gemara, Rav Yosi, if that's Rav Yosi, we learned Rav Yosi's opinion the opposite. Meaning, if the Mishnah is Rav Yosi, that means Rav Yosi is of the opinion that it's only going to be considered that it's going to stay there forever is if you intend it to be there. But bistama, with no intent, it will not be there. Says the Gemara, but we learn Rav Yosi the opposite. The Tanya, 3 lines on the top, Rav Yosi says, Tavin, if we have straw, and you're not going to clear it out, it's like regular dirt, ubatel, and it's going to be batel where it is. Offer, whereas if you have dirt, and you're going to intend to clear it out, you have intention to remove that dirt, then it's like stam tevin, like regular straw. Batel. What do we see clearly according to the opinion of Rav Yosi? It depends on your. It's only if you're going to be asid lefanaisei or not. Says the Gemara, so that's a steer in Rav Yosi. We just said Rav Yosi a moment ago is only bit loy in, loy bit loy. If you do not have intent to be mevatel, to nullify the straw and the stones, it will not work. But what do we see over here? We see over here when it comes to straw, when it comes to teven, even when it's ein asid lefanaisai, it's going to be like stam afar, and it's going to be batal. Even without intent, it's going to be batal. That's a stira, that's a contradiction in the opinion of Rabbi Yaisi. Answers the Gemara, Elam Rav Asi, a different answer. Man Tana Eruvin, who's our Tana, not who's the Tana of Oilus, who's our Tana, the Mishnah. That's Rav Yaisi. That's going to be Rav Yaisi. That's going to say that stama is going to yes work, and the Mishnah on Oilus that says stama is not going to work, and you have that specific intent. That is a different opinion. Rav Huna Rav Yeshua Amar, a different answer. Toma Shabbos Karamis, what's your question? You're asking from Toma to our Mishnah on Shabbos. Hanach is your Shabbos. Leave Shabbos alone. Dafilu Arniki Nam Mivatal Inish. Because even a wallet a person is going to be Mivatal with regard to Ilcha Shabbos. We'll see Rashi. Let's see Rashi to swing aside directly across it to Rashi. Rashi says, Hanach is your Shabbos. Leave Shabbos. Kikoin Masnisan, even the offer, Einoi Nitel B'Shabbos, Stami Batal. That's why. Because on Shabbos, third is muksa. That's why you're going to leave it there. This is not a regular din of stama. Did you have intent to leave it there? Do you not have intent to there? On Shabbos, you can't move the dirt because it's muksa. That's the reason you're going to leave it there. As we see, dafilu arniki, even if you have a wallet, you have cash during the week, you're not going to leave your cash there. You're not mavatal it there. But on Shabbos, Gismali Mai says Rashi, Batal Sham, you're going to leave it there. But straw and other things, straw and stubble, you can take away because it's animal food. So the Gemara is showing us that Shabbos is a completely different din. Shabbos, you have to contend with muksa. Shabbos, if it's not muksa, you can give it to your animals. But it's not necessarily going to be, you can't ask a question from other places, a regular din, are you yes going to nullify it or no going to nullify it? That's the second terror. So again, so far we have two answers. The first answer is that our Mishnah Rav Yaisi that says stam without intent is batal. The second answer, Rav Yeshua says there's no question. Toma is one din, has to do with batal. If you intend to leave it there, Shabbos is a totally different reason why you're going to leave it there. Rav Ashi Amar, Rav Ashi says the third teres. Bayis acharitz kol ramis. You asking a question from Bayis from the din of Toma to our Mishnah with the din of charitz of a ditch. Bishlam charitz. It makes a lot of sense when it comes to the ditch. Limitame kai. That what's a ditch? A ditch is normal to be filled up, and therefore when there's dirt, we assume you're going to leave it there. However, labayis limitame kai. Is a house normal to be filled up? Of course not. So if you have your house and you intend to leave the straw and the rocks and the stones there, then we say you're going to leave it there. But stam, of course not. Whereas by the charitz, meaning this third teretz, Rav Ashi is saying we have to look at the context. When it comes to a ditch, it's normal to fill even with the dirt, so you can leave it there. When it comes to the house, it's not normal, so it has to do with intent. Says the Gemara, the two dots. So we continued in the Mishnah, and we said, what if you put a board across this ditch that is 4 tefachim wide? We'll show a bunch of pictures in a moment. Amar Rava, the Mishnah is only discussing when you put the board of the rachvai. We'll show the picture, but it means across the ditch, meaning from one chatzah to the next. But if you put it in the length, meaning if you put it inside the ditch, this will be clear when we see that picture, but basically it's not a cross. It's not like a bridge over the ditch, but rather it's inside the ditch, kol shunami. Then even if it's a slight amount of width, it's also going to work. Why? Because it decreases it from being 4 tfachim. So let's see. Over here you see the picture of the board across the two chatziris. And you see that when you put the board from one chatzir to the next, across the chatzir, across the ditch, that's when we said it has to be 4 tfachim. However, and similarly like we saw in the Gezitrais, we saw Rashi, this is the sheet of Rashi. I'll just preface, there are many, many shitas. For all those who have this Kol Hashem picture book, you can flip through and see all the different shitas. Rabbi Yonis on the Rashi, but Taisus, we're just going to explain the basic sheet of Rashi. The same thing with those 2 porches sticking off, you have the 4 tefach wide that goes from one porch to the next. Here's another case. However, when it's la'arkai, when it's within the ditch, that's when we say over here that even any amount of width. Why? Very simply, because any amount of width will diminish the width of the ditch. The ditch was 4 tefachim, what created all these issues. But if the ditch is not 4 tefachim, you filled it up a little bit, then it's not an issue. So you put in this beam, this little beam, then it's going to fix the story. Says the Gemara. The Chayshnik Zutrai Zu Keneged Zu, like we just saw, you have those 2 porches, one facing the other. Amar Rava Hadamber Zu Keneged Zu. Ein Zu Ella Shaloi Keneged Zu. In One more time. Oh, the Amrit, that which we said in the Mishnah, that when it's one facing the other, you need to have the board going across, is zu keneged zu. When one is facing, they're level from each other. Again, lots of machlekes rishayim here, but we're going to go with the Pashib Shan, is when they're facing each other in. That's when we say this in. Zu shaloi keneged zu, but when one is not facing each other, loi, then it's not going to work. Furthermore, b'zula ma'ilami zu nami lo amar. When we said one is above the other, we also don't say the din that it does not work because they're not level. You do not go from one to the other. It's only if there's a height differential of 3 tfachim. That's when we say it doesn't help because it gets messed up. They're in different levels. Then we just look at like a crooked porch because you could still, it's not so high up, and then it will still, yes, be no problem. As you see over here, the picture shows us when it's when there's 3 tfachim between these two porches. Again, this is the shita of Rashi. But when it's less than 3 tfachim, then it's not an issue, and you can understand the pashut understanding of Rashi is because when it's less than 3 tfachim, it's not such a big deal to walk from one to the next. Says the Mishnah. New Mishnah, Ayin Tesam and Aleph, says the Mishnah. Matvin shebein shtei chatzeris. We have a bundle of straw that's creating a wall between 2 chatzeris. Kavay asar tfachim. It's 10 tefachim tall. Ma'arvin shnayim ve'ma'arvin echad. We know this already. What's a mechitza? 10 tefachim. So when the straw is 10 tefachim tall, then you have to make 2 independent eruvin because it splits it up in the middle. Ve'in ma'arvin echad. You cannot make 1 eruv because you have a mechitza down the middle. Elu ma'achilin mikan, ve'elu ma'achilin mikan. And each Chatzar is allowed to eat from that straw. We'll see. You're allowed to let your animals eat from that straw, which is the wall. What happens? The animals eat, and now it's no longer 10 tefachim tall. Says the Mishnah, then you lost your wall, and then you make 1 ear bowl together. You see over here, this is your matfin, this is your big wall of straw, and the halacha is that you're allowed to let the animals eat from it, but if it's pachais from 10 tefachim, it's less than 10 tefachim, then you lost your wall, and then you make 1 big ear of all together. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Huna. Says Rav Huna, Ubelvad, this din is shalo yitin l'doich kupasai. Says Rav Huna, you're allowed to let your animals eat from the wall, but you're not allowed to take the straw, put it into your kupa, into your box, to give it to the animals v'yachol and feed the animals. V'lu'ukmi shari. Whereas, says the Gemara, you're not allowed to put it in your box to feed to the animals. Ulu'ukmi shari. But what are you allowed to yes do? Let your animals go and eat on their own. As you see, Rashi at the bottom over here says, you're allowed to stand the animal to eat there. Seemingly, it sounds like you got to take the animal, put it on the straw, and let it eat there. Says the Gemara, is that true? You're allowed to let your animal eat from grass that is attached, that's connected to the ground in Shabbos. But you're not allowed to let your animal eat for something that is detached, which is muksa on Shabbos. Why not? What is the svara? Let's see Rashi over here. Rashi explains. Rashi's towards the end of the narrow line. Says Rashi, if it's attached, then you're allowed to let your animal eat from it. Why? We're not afraid you're going to come to rip off some grass and give it to the animal. That's an Isidaraisa to pull out the grass and give it to the animal. Aval, Isser Muksa, if it's detached, if it's a straw wall, where it's just an Isser Muksa, not just, but it's an Isser Darabanan, then kill in the eyes of people, it's more Mekel. We're afraid you're going to come and give it to the animal. They ask the Gemara, so too in our case, given the Isser Darabanan, we should be nervous. That is the question of the Gemara. Answers the Gemara, you're right. It doesn't mean you're actually taking the food and giving it to him. It means the kaim laba'ap, you're not taking the animal, putting it on the food. The kaim laba'ap, but you're standing in front of the animal. Vaz lavachlan, you're directing it and it's eating on its own. And that is what is going to be mutter, because you're not actually standing the animal on it. Says the Gemara further, what do we say? So we said, so fine, one issue we took care of was you're not actually standing the animal on it, you're just sort of directing it there, fine, then we're not worried, you can come pick it up and give it to the animal. What do we say? We said you can't take the straw, put it into the box to give to the animal. Says the Gemara, why not? We learned in a brisa. We have a house, a room between 2 different chatzeros. We'll show a picture in a minute. And that room is filled up with straw. So So what's the halacha? Since you have a wall, you have this house with the straw down the middle, same thing. Each one makes their own eruv. You don't make it as one. So it sounds very similar to our case. But the brisa continues. Each person is allowed to take the straw, put it in a box, and feed it to the animals. So that's a direct contradiction to what we just said. First, let's show a picture, then we'll continue the brisa. Here you see there's like a room between two chatzeros. There's this wall of straw down the middle, seemingly almost identical to our case. And what do we say? We said you're allowed to take from the straw and give it to the animal. Ask the Gemara why. We just learned in our case that you're not allowed to do that. And now the brisa continues. That's going to be the question. We'll come back to that in one moment. Let's just finish up the brisa. The brisa continues. What happens if, as you're feeding the animal, like we saw before, the wall is shorter than 10 tvachim? What's the halacha? Shnei masurim. Now you lost their wall. So now you don't have a wall on Shabbos. You don't have an eruv together on Shabbos. So you seemingly have a new rishos of everyone all together. You can't carry. So Kate said, so what should you do? This should remind us of previous Gemaras. So one of these people shuts his door, and he gives up his rishos. So he's going to be also to carry because he gave up his rishos, he gave up his rights. However, but his friends will be allowed. And similarly, we said this din, if you have a pit of straw, between two Tchum of Shabbos, we'll discuss this in a bit, and that's going to be the same din. We'll speak of that in a minute. What's the question? Says the Gemara Ketani Miyos. What do we see in this brisa? Each one's allowed to put in the box and feed the animal. Again, the second half of the brisa, which dealt with the wall being diminished and therefore closing your door, giving up your rights of your rishos, the Gemara will talk about in a moment, so we're not going to talk about that yet. But first, let's deal with the question. The question is, we saw that what? Each one is allowed to put in his box to feed the animal. Answers the Gemara, Amri, since it's in a house, or tikra, there was an integral difference in the two cases. In one case, you had a wall of straw between two chatzeros. In second case, you had a wall of straw in a house between two chatzeros. Since it's inside the house, it's more recognizable if the wall diminishes, and that's the reason why it's going to be mutter. But in our case, and therefore you're not able to actually take the straw and put it into the basket. So again, here's the case. You have the wall of straw between the two houses. If it gets too small, what do? Let's say guy on the left takes his door over there, shuts the door, gives up his rights, and the guy on the right, he can now carry. Why? Because it's one big chaser. They didn't make an ear, but because he gave up his rights, he's going to be allowed to carry. Let's just show the picture. This was the other case that you have the straw smack in the middle of two Eruvin tchumim. Each one's 2,000 amos, and then you have the straw right in the middle. So neither one could enter into the other half of the straw, but they're allowed to eat from their half. The Gemara will explain what the chiddush of that is right now. Says the Gemara, so what do the brisa say? 6 lines to the bottom. That if it's less than 10 tefachim, all of a sudden they both become aser. Says the Gemara, what's meduyak from here? What's precise? That as long as the wall was 10 tefachim, it's mutter, even though it's indoors. Even though it doesn't reach the roof. Shema mino, we have a right on that we spoke about many blot ago. We see over here, you have a mechitza, you have a partition of straw inside the house. It does not reach the roof. Yeah, we said it's good. What do we see? We see partitions don't have to reach the roof. We're talking about a house that the roof is 13 and a little bit. And the straw goes up until 10. Therefore, you have a lovud filling up the last gap. So maybe it is the case that it reaches the roof. That's how Abaye answers it. Similar to he says, you can even say we're talking about a house which is 10 tfachim, and the straw is 7 and a little bit. Going back on both terutzim, kilava dummy, and therefore it's going to be good. So the first teretz said the straw is 10, the house is 13 and a bit. Love it fills it up. The second teretz says the house is 10, the straw is 7. Love it fills it up. But on both of them, we see a way to answer up, and we do not have to come along and say a raya that the mechitza does not have to reach the roof. Says the Gemara, technical question. The first answer, it said that the wall was diminished from 10. Sounds like this wall of straw was 10 tfachim. What does that mean exactly? It's not a wall of 10. The wall's only 7 a little bit. Says the Gemara, means from it having a halachic status of 10. Since it's 7 a little bit, plus the lavud, so it's a halachic status of 10. So Rav Huna defends his opinion. Says the Gemara further. 2 dots, 4 lines down, ayin tesam in peace. Shneim asurim. So he said if the wall diminishes, they're both asur. Shema mina dur nabam b'Shabbos asurim. Says the Gemara, you know what we see from here? When Shabbos began, each one had their own rishos, each one was able to carry. On Shabbos, the wall decreased, it became one big rishos. We said it's now us. So raya that a diurin, if residents are created on Shabbos, we have a situation that now there's this joint ownership that happened on Shabbos itself. We see it's aser. Says the Gemara, no raya. Maybe the case was really it happened yesterday before Shabbos. You just didn't know about it. Next case of Ruaisa, what should he do? We said he shut the door and you give up your rishos. Ask the Gemara, Tarti, why do you have to do both? If you close the door, why do you have to give your rishos? If you give the rishos, why do you have to close the door? Says the Gemara, you're right. I know that's Beisai, I'm about to Shusai. Do one or the other, you don't have to do both. If I say a second answer, really, you have to do both. You know why? Keep the dashbei, since they're used to using this rishos, till now they've been able to carry. Since they're accustomed to, we're more machmir. Therefore, us the taltule, we're afraid they're going to come to carry, so we're more machmir, and we make them both shut the door and give up their rishos. Says the Gemara further, he himself can't carry because he gave his rights. His friend can. Says the Gemara, Shita, of course you can't carry. Of course he has carry. Says the Gemara, the case is that the other guy goes and then says, I'm giving you back the rights. So now what do we do? Hakam the chiddush is, it doesn't work. You can't give rishos back and forth. One gave his rishos, and that is the story. The other one cannot give it back. That's the chiddush of the Mishnah. One more little bit before the Mishnah. Like the case we saw over here, that when you have the straw between two tchum, each one ends, we said each person is allowed to eat from the straw. Says the Gemara, Pshita, of course, what's the Chiddush? The Chiddush is the Rabbi Kiva, the Amar it's Chumin Daraisa. Rabbi Kiva holds the Chumin Daraisa. Therefore what? Maybe if Chumin Daraisa, we should be afraid, we shouldn't let you eat from the straw. Because maybe while you're eating from the straw, you'll come to take from the other side, outside of your 2,000 Amais. Kamash Malan says the Gemara that we don't make such a Gzeira. Says the Mishnah. Ketzad Mishtadfim b'Mavli. New case. Back to making an Ishita of Mivuais. What's that? Till now we had a little bit about Chatzeris. Now back to the Mavli. What's the Mavli? Houses into Chatzer into Mavli. All the people in all these different Chatzeris have to get together, join a joint ownership inside the Mavli. Says the Gemara, how practically do you do it? Says the Mishnah. Meniach zechavis. You put down a barrel. Vaymer and you say, Hare zul chabnei Mavli. I give it away to everyone and we all become owners inside this barrel. But you have to actually give it to them. How do you give them rights? Through your son or your daughter who's a gadol, 12 or 13 years old. Actually, I shouldn't say that's so pashut. Whether you need just the years, maybe you also need simanim, shtei sayers, that's always going to be a machlekes. However, you give it over via your children. Or or your Jewish slaves. Or via your wife. You cannot give it away. Now with your children who are kitanim, we're not Jewish. Why? Because their hands, the hands of your katan, the hands of the slave who's not Jewish, their hand is like your hand. Therefore, they cannot be mizaka. They cannot acquire ownership for all the other people. Let's just begin the Gemara. Amar Rav Yehuda. Chavish al shtufei mevois. Another halacha says Rav Yehuda. This barrel, you give over this barrel to everyone. What do you have to do? Sarich like biyam min akarka tefach. You have to pick up the barrel from the ground 1 tefach. When you want to give it away, you got to pick it up a tefach. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava. Hani tarti mili sabit b'madisa amrinu. These 2 things. One, like you just said, you have to pick up the barrel of tefach. The second, like I'm about to explain, the elders b'madisa said, Chada. One was this thing that when everyone in the Rishos, you have to pick it up a tefach. The idach is Hamakadish, someone who makes kiddush of simple halacha. Im time malei lugmav yatsa vim lavli yatsa. Simple halacha. Unfortunately, some people make an error. You have to drink a malei lugmav. It's not so much, which is rive of a revius, about 2 ounces, I would say. to get, or maybe about 3 ounces on Friday night, 2.5 ounces when it's a deraisa. When you make Kiddush, you have to drink a mali lugma of a cheekful. Those were the 2 dinim of the elders of Pumbedisa. Once we're on that topic, of course, we segue a little bit. Amar Rav Chaviva, Anami Sabedisa Amrinu. Another halacha from the elders of Pumbedisa. 2 lines for the white lines. The Amar Rav Yudamer Shmuel, Oisem Medur Lechaya b'Shabbos. Halacha we've seen. You're allowed to make a fire for a chaya, woman that just gave birth on Shabbos. Savar Minei, the first white line, the chaya in the chayla. So they thought only for the chaya. Only for the woman who gave birth, but not for a regular chayla. They also thought only during the winter, when it's very cold, but not during the summer. However, Itmar, the halacha, we say, Amar Rav Chibar, Amar Shmuel, Hikis Dam, if someone gave up love and it's standing and he has the chills, Lamaisa, you're allowed to make him a fire even during the summer. There's a special kula when it comes to being cold. We are more makel because we know that the cold could destroy the body, and therefore we're allowed to make a fire even for a regular chayla. Exactly what level chayla? Not for now. One more halacha, one last halacha of the elders from Medisa. Deitmar ezu asherah stam. What is a regular asherah tree that was worshipped by Avodah Zarah? How do we know which tree it is? If we ever find a tree that the Goyim are watching it carefully, you know that's a tree of the Asherah. On Peyamid Aleph, they're watching the tree, but they're not eating from the fruit. That shows you that's a tree they worship for the Zara, and that's a tree that you're going to have to destroy. Shmuel Amar, ki going to army hanitami the shibcha devei nisrafi l'shasu lei b'yoyim chagam. Or if you hear the Goyim saying, this is the dates that we're going to use to make the beer for the Avodah Zarah on the day of their holiday, it's another way to know that that tree is for Avodah Zarah. We'll pick it up from here tomorrow. Have a fabulous day.